and welcome to Dawn Osborne's Empowerment Podcast. The big question women like you and me ask is, how do we do that? How do we grow our mindset? How do we increase our emotional intelligence? How do we do life, business, and marketing and yet still remain balanced in the rhythm of our life and family? Those are the questions that this podcast is going to answer. My name is Dawn Osborne and welcome to my Empowerment Podcast.
Hello everybody and welcome to another Wow Women show. We have the very beautiful Lisa Bruton on today. She is a life coach and she really caught my attention a couple of years ago when I found out that she was taking women on women's retreats, not only in Australia, but she was taking them overseas and she was impacting women globally. And I just went, wow, this girl is amazing. I feel like she is a little powerhouse and she's got a heart of gold and she's got a heart for women. And to see women find a sacred space to really get in touch with who they are as women and their purpose and their dreams in their life. So I'm very excited for her to come and share her wisdom. So, hey Lisa, welcome.
Hello.
Welcome to Wow Women. So you're a life coach and you take these women on these retreats. I would call you a fearless woman. Seriously, I think you're a woman of faith. Truly, I remember having a meeting with you, and you were just about to take half a dozen or a dozen women to a French castle. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was us last year. So, I think
last year.
Yeah, it was last year, and then this year we've also been to a tropical island in the Philippines. So, and that was pretty amazing as well.
Okay. You don't do things by halves. It's not like we're going up, we're hiring a room from the local, event center. No, we'll take them to a French castle. I mean, that to me just makes me go, wow. And I feel like you are a real pioneer and you're touching women. And so, yeah, I'd love to hear a bit more about kind of your back end story, because you don't get to be such a woman of faith and, it's a risk to do stuff like that,
Yeah,
it's like a big step of like walking on water and not sinking. And so I'd love to hear, this is the end result, right? This is who you are now, but I'm sure there would be a back end journey of what you've been through that if someone was listening today, they could hear your story and go, oh, wow, look where Lisa is now. I wonder what her story was. And I'm sure some of our listeners would love to hear that back end story. So if you could just kind of share with us, where it all started, what you've been through, and then people, if you're listening right now, just hang in for the wisdom at the end, because she's going to share 3 pieces of wisdom with us, and I'm sure they're going to be like nuggets. So Lisa, over to you. Tell us a little bit more about your beginning journey.
Sure. In all honesty, it was very normal beginning, as in, I grew up in a household with mum and dad, and they were very loving, and we went to church, and we just had a really nice community. Nothing out of the ordinary happened to me or with my family. We'd go on nice holidays and I was a good girl. And then, I went to uni and studied occupational therapy. And so it was kind of, I felt like I was following the steps that you follow for a normal life, but I felt there was something more within me. And so it wasn't until there was little pieces where I'd be like, I feel like I'm created for more. And I wasn't quite sure what that was. And so even when I was working as an occupational therapist, I actually ended up quitting my job and going over to Austria and studying. I went to a Bible college in Austria just by myself, surrounded by Americans and Europeans. And it was there that I was kind of awoken to the fact that I was called to run women's retreats. So that's kind of where it birthed.
Ah, okay. And then what happened next?
So after that, I realized I wasn't really equipped. So I was 26, 27 at the time, and I really hadn't walked anything too major at that time. And I did have that, well, what do I have to offer? And so I came home and I still worked as an OT, but I also began to study life coaching and behavior and became a behavioral analyst. And so I just started to equip myself in what I felt God was calling me to do. And and so I got married, and again, it still felt like life was fairly by the book. And then something quite major happened in my life. And I guess that's when I started
I was waiting for that bit because it all sounds too rosy.
Too nice, right?
Hang on a minute. Hang on. Where's the bit in the movie where everything's wonderful and there's, they're running through the long grass holding hands, and then all of a sudden it's like
rainbows and lollipops.
Yeah. There's a moment where it all just goes nuts. And this is the bit that I want to hear, because this is the bit that, often we go through some huge adversity, but it's what makes us, and it makes us better coaches. It makes us better women. It makes us better mothers, better friends, better leaders. So this is the bit that I really want to hear about. So continue on your story.
So I will give just a little bit more of a background to where it's up to that point before things started to go hairy. I had actually, I had done some bold things before that. Like I went over to India by myself and lived out there for 3 months with the locals, and ended up being a part of building an orphanage and things like that. Wow. So I had a real solid faith in God. So whenever he told me to do something, I would just do it. And I would see he meet me in a big way and really make the impossible possible. So I did have that very big awareness of who God is. And then how old was I? I was a new mum, so I had Aria, and she was 14 weeks old. And when she was 14 weeks old, my niece Sarah passed away, and she was my second niece to pass away, actually. And I'd already lost a few babies, miscarriages. So I really dropped my bundle, and I just said, God, I don't know who you are, and I don't know who I am. And so I really lost my footing. And it wasn't until but I held on to that faith. There was just something that I held on to, and I realized that we can't control life, and also real faith is trusting God no matter what the outcome. And so I recovered from that. I felt I'd recovered. And then a year later, my sister was actually arrested for she was charged, so not found guilty, but charged with grievous bodily harm with attempt to murder on my niece who passed away. And so that was quite, and it happened in front of me, actually. She was arrested in front of me, and then she ended up having to live with me for 3 months post, so she was on bail. And it was a really horrible time, like lots of investigations going on, and our family was in shock, and I didn't know what was up or what was down. And during that time, just towards the end of the 3 months she was to live with me, she actually confessed to me that she did suffocate Sarah, and that sent my world into a total spin. And I think that's when I felt God draw me away, and he said, come away with me. And so I actually went away with him a couple of times, and each time there would be gold within that. And, and it would be to restore peace and just to get me looking back at him. The second time was to restore joy. And so and that you can find joy in the tough times, and you're allowed to find, you're allowed to have good things happen in your life, even when you're going through some really horrific things. And the last one was, it just brought me deep comfort. And so he just kept drawing me away. And and so that was a journey of looking to God when things were really confusing, and and just knowing that amongst the messiness, there's still good, and there's still purpose in my life, and that life doesn't have to stop just because you're in the midst of chaos. And but is this resounding? Like, is this what you're after?
Oh my gosh! I mean, look, everybody's got a story, right? That is not necessarily out there, and that is really that's an amazing story. And as sad as it is, I can see that you retreating with God has given you strength and hope to and part of that situation created the woman that you are today. And I think some of us listening could be going through similar circumstances. I'm thank you, Lisa, for being so vulnerable and sharing that story. I mean, that will help some people out there that it might not necessarily look like that, but they could be going through some pain in their life right now. And just to hear you go, you know what, on the other side of that, this is what I did. This worked for me. I created space in my life. I sought God. Then there could be women of faith who are listening right now, who are like, well, that's the answer. That's the answer.
Absolutely. And I think
and seek God.
Totally. And I think the big key is just not to think that life is over because you're in the chaos, because it was a 4-year process of having to go through, different court processes. And I was, interviewed by police and whatnot. And my sister over the time said, actually, that confession, that was done under stress, but it was very confusing as to what was true and what wasn't. And she wasn't well, and my family, it was all kind of still falling apart. But amongst that, God said it's time to start the women's retreats. So it was amongst the chaos that I actually birthed Arise Sanctuary. And it was a year into running the retreats that I then had to, I was subpoenaed so it was all coming to the end, and you have to walk this journey. It's not something you can go, oh, sorry, I don't want a part of this. You have to work through your pain and your grief and forgiveness, and then it all comes back to just trusting God, and He's the judge. But it was last year, at the start of the year, I was handed a subpoena because the trial was all coming to an end in a very big way. It was going to be in the Supreme Court. So it was a 3-week trial. It was very public. It was on the front pages of newspapers, and it was on TV, and it was very exposing. But at the start of the year, I was handed the subpoena, and it felt extremely lonely because I was subpoenaed by the prosecution. So that's the people who are taking Ashley, my sister, to court. And so they didn't really want to quit me, and neither did the defense, because it's best if I was left unprepared, I guess, so that they could get what they wanted. And so I felt extreme amounts of pressure and stress over those next few weeks after receiving the subpoena, because I just thought, I felt like I was actually in the devil's territory, to be honest. Like, and just very aware that my parents very much believed in my sister's innocence, but I was being called to testify against it, and my heart wanted to see my sister walk free. I honestly didn't want to see her going to jail or anything like that. And so there was, there's this extra pressure on Christian women to be strong and to say, I can do it, and God's with me, so therefore I'm fine. And so I put on this mask of like, I'm okay, I can do this. But meanwhile, my husband and I were having conversations, and I did not remember them the next day. I was putting clean clothes into the bin. I was filling the dishwasher with pegs. Like, I just wasn't okay. And I finally admitted it. I finally said, I'm not coping. I'm actually, but I know I can do this well, but I'm not doing it well. And so I just called out to God and I said, help me. And I also admitted to my husband, I'm not okay. And he was like, I know, honey. But it just gave me that space to start to become tender with myself, and to and to hand it to God and say, help me out here because I feel like I'm drowning. And
I think a lot of women, you're right. You know, I describe this as being invincible. I have gone through a season of my life where you go, I'm invincible. Like nothing could happen. You know, I've got faith, I've got friends, I've got everything I need, and I'm invincible. But there is a moment, and you know, that you get to the end of you. I call it, you kind of get to the end of yourself, and you're like, oh my gosh, I've got nothing left. I've got nothing left to give. I feel like I'm just got puncture wounds and everything out of me has been drained and I'm empty. And I think that's where we all find our faith. You know, we can find faith in the midst of that. But I love that you coming to that place where you admit it is very, very empowering. And actually, it's interesting. The moment you go, well, you know what, I'm actually really quite weak right now, is actually empowering. That moment where you go, I actually need others. I need friends. I need my family. I need people to help me. I think that's a very, it's like a pivotal moment in a woman's or anybody's life where you go, I admit that I need something outside of myself. I haven't got it all together. I mean, and we watch, you know, Facebook and Instagram and all these, you know, and we've got this, what, you know, we put our happy pictures up.
Yeah. Yes.
and so we all think everybody's super happy and living this wildly wonderful life. Then you're like, oh my gosh, I'm absolutely having a nightmare here. But
so true.
Yeah, and that tips us more out of the edge because we think everybody else has got it together and not us. So I mean, just I know someone listening to this would be going, you know what, that makes me feel. I mean, it's a tragedy what you've been through, and you know, but I know that people would be listening, and I know that they would feel a sense of hope from your story. They would go, actually, if she can get through that, and her family, then you know what, could be hope for me in my situation. I would really love to hear from you, Lisa. You know what, when you finally said, okay, do you know what, I need help, what happened to you after that? You know, when you got to the end of yourself, what happened then? Where was your hope? What vision did you have? What was going on with you?
I fully expected to, well, initially, as soon as I said I need help and I'm not okay, I felt peace.
Yes.
And it was like an exchange done with God. Like, okay, here's all my rubbish and my stress and my confusion and my pain. I hand it to you. And I just really expected for him to meet me in some way. And and he did. So a couple of days later, it's all a bit blurry with time frames, but I knew it was really soon afterwards. I get a phone call from a friend saying, hey, there's this church gathering and there's this really amazing man coming to speak. I think you'd really enjoy him. And I was like, no, thank you. When I'm stressed, I don't want a piece of, I don't want to be around people. But there was just this inner something that said go. And so I went and, everyone was all happy. And I just was like, don't talk to me. But I don't want to talk to you. So I just sat down and, found my little place. But when the guy got up to speak, and I'd never met him before, I'd never met anyone in this church before either, so they didn't know my story. And he just got up and said, I've been trying to prepare my sermon all week, but all I can hear is legal letter. He said, who's here who's received a legal letter or a legal form that's brought intimidation and fear? And I was like, oh my goodness, that's me. And he said, this is about you. And so everyone just gathered around me and they prayed. And this man who really hears God's voice really clearly, he said, and again, he doesn't know anything about my story. He said, you're not crazy. there has been an assignment to bring confusion to you, and we break it right now in Jesus' name. And I just felt immediate clarity, and I was like, I'm back. And he said, and then he said this, he said, this legal form, this whatever it is, it's not from the enemy, it's not from the devil. You are in God's territory, and he has you. And that was it. That's all I needed to hear, was to know that I was in his territory and that he had this. And it was, and they prayed other things, but they were the main things that just set my feet back on solid ground. And that was really the shift. And I was still really, whole year I was really careful with who I let speak into my life, who I let into my life.
Yes.
I kind of battened down the hatches. I still ran retreats, and God still did amazing things there, and women still came, and I felt really confident in that.
Yeah.
But I was really careful with who I let in my life, and I was really tender with myself as well.
Yeah. Wow, Lisa, that is quite a story. That's amazing. And I love also too that you end up at an event where you don't want to go and you don't want to be, but there's these prophetic people that know, God knows what you need to hear to get you back on solid ground. So
exactly.
I encourage anybody who's resisting going to some event or where they've been invited, ignore the resistance and go, because you just might find a place where you could be encouraged, healed. There could be some healing that could take place.
Absolutely.
For you. So that's amazing, Lisa. And you know what? I just want to applaud you for being so vulnerable and sharing that story with us. And I'm just hoping that your family is all reconciled and restored from all of that. And I'm sure that you will help a lot of women who may be going through some similar circumstances. But that's no wonder you're a retreat. No wonder you're fiercely passionate about helping women because
I really
of their
am.
own journey. Yeah, I can see how going through, I can see that going through that season of pain in your life has actually birthed something very purposeful for you and for others to come, because obviously you found your healing by creating that space to hear from God about your life.
That's right.
I often hear, a transformed life transforms life. I say it all the time.
Oh, I like that.
You facilitate that space for women to come into so that they can, find God and find some healing for whatever they're going through. And I think that's amazing. And I love that out of a painful situation, there is now purpose. And that is, that's a beautiful story. It's actually a story of hope. It's actually inspirational. And I feel like there is more for you. But I really feel like there is someone listening on, or there's going to be someone listening to this, or they're watching this. And I really feel that, you might be going through a painful situation right now. And I feel like I'm kind of I don't normally do this, but there must be someone out there that just needs to hear today that it's going to be okay. Whatever you're going through, you're going to be put into that place where people are going to surround you and they're going to help you get some healing.
Absolutely.
So if that's for anybody, I just want to, throw that out into the airways. What's happened for Lisa and her family will happen for you. So Lisa, we haven't even got to the wisdom tips yet. Let's go into to your wisdom. So let's take, because my gosh, if anybody, there is a lot of wisdom that would have been gained from that experience. So tell us what number one tip is for our ladies.
Number one is definitely be honest with yourself and be honest with God.
Yeah.
Because it's not
No, go on.
Nothing can move, nothing can shift or move until you're honest. And no matter how terrible you think that honesty is.
Yes. Because sometimes on honesty, when the truth is revealed, sometimes you'd rather go, no, put that back.
No, I'm sure I'm not like that. Yeah.
No, I'm amazing. Yeah, it's like my whole invincible thing. You know, when I found out that I wasn't invincible, I was devastated. I was like, what? I can't do everything?
Yeah.
What the heck? I thought I could. Yeah. Yeah. But you're right. The first place you need to be honest before you can be honest with anybody else is yourself. And
Yeah.
once you come into that acknowledgement of actually, this is who I really am, then you can work with that. And you know, if you find yourself in a pit, you can you find some people and some tools to get out of it and make change.
Yeah.
Okay,
Exactly.
that's awesome. Awesome. Number 2, what's number 2?
I think number 2 would have to be being wise with who's in your world, especially your inner world. So who hears your heart, who speaks into your life. And I think that goes for throughout your whole entire life, but particularly when you're walking something extremely difficult.
Yeah. That's, and you know what, that pops up a lot in these shows, is about making sure you surround yourself with the right tribe, the right people. So
and people who are for you, hey.
Yeah, that's right. And who can give you wisdom and good counsel when you need it.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Okay, tip number 3.
Tip number 3, just especially when you're going through pressure and stress, it would simply be kind to yourself. Do things that it's okay to do things that are joyful and that bring you joy. Actually, it's essential, but sometimes that can be the first thing that shifts out of our world when we're incredibly stressed, is get rid of all the stuff that is fun, but actually that's one of the things that we need to hold on to.
Right. Okay. That's awesome, Lisa. That is so good. Okay, so what's next for Lisa? What does your next season look like?
Well, next year, so I finished up all the retreats for this year, but next year we've got 2 3-day retreats in Australia. Then they're both on the Sunshine Coast. We do have international retreats. We've got one in Morocco. And again, another private island in the Philippines. So, and that's all to ourselves, and we're totally looked after. Yeah.
Wow. I want to come.
Please come.
Oh my God.
And it's for every woman. You don't have to be going through hard trials. Sometimes it's shifts of season, or just knowing there's something more, or just needing to rest. So yeah.
I do a cruise once a year. I take women on a cruise.
Oh, amazing.
We should collaborate.
Well, let's chat.
We should join forces. Let's go on a cruise.
That sounds amazing.
That would be fun, right? Let's do a Wow Women cruise.
Oh my goodness.
Can you imagine if I got all the Wow Women together and we did a cruise and then we invited? It'll be the biggest party. It'll be fantastic. I think
take over the cruise ship.
We'll take over. There would be like all these powerful, empowered women. We'd be like crazy. The ship wouldn't know what hit it. So I might actually. I'm tempted. I want to go. I want to definitely go. So, all right. Well, you are amazing, Lisa. Honestly, that was a real wow woman show like that, and I'm sure, and I can even see all the reactions that people are giving. That was really powerful. So, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was a real honor.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Lisa, and I look forward to following your journey. So,
likewise. Bye.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Wow Women Show. We are here every Wednesday. We've got another exciting Wow Woman for you next week. She is an entrepreneurial woman, and I'm sure she's going to share some fantastic stuff with us with her story. So make sure you join us. If you love this show, share it with others. Tag someone. Watch the replay or listen. We're available on this. Should be a podcast as well. So listen to the podcast. Share it with others who you think it will help. But otherwise, we will join you next time on the Wow Women Show. Thanks for having us. Bye.